What's going on, everybody? Welcome to I Heard You When You Said. My name is Justin, and I also have two people with me today. This is a first for the podcast, but the second one, she goes by Stacy. Well, she goes by many names. That would be accurate. That would be accurate, right?
How many are you going to share? I mean, the list is very long of the things you call me. I'm slightly concerned at the moment.
Well, regardless of how she is known on the streets, as we'll say, she is not a licensed therapist and I'm not a licensed doctor. So anything we say on this podcast is not to be taken as medical advice, although we do say some pretty cool shit. So I'm not saying your life couldn't get better, just saying it's not medical or mental advice. So now that we got all the fun stuff out of the way, this is actually take number 10,000 at this podcast. At this point, but we do have a very special guest with us here today, Miss Renee Bernhard from Foster Source, and we're super excited to have her and get to hear her story. Renee, what you up to today?
Hey. Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited. I've got my fingers crossed for take 10,000.
I am so confident about this. And it was really funny as we literally as take 10,000, I'm like, what cool thing do we get to do next? And now that we've gotten all of the practice out of the way, all of us are a little bit more unhinged today, which I think is going to be such a better listen because it could only go right. Can only go right from here. So I do want to add a trigger warning to this podcast. If you don't like bad words, foul language, or stories that involve, early childhood trauma or navigating the aftermath of early childhood trauma, either as a child yourself or as a foster parent or adopted parent, careful as you listen. We just don't want to catch you off guard. Usually those two things in foul language and Taylor Swift references go very much hand in hand of what you will see today, which is why Renee and I get along so phenomenally and Justin doesn't know 92% of the Taylor Swift references. We are sliding in on the down low that we think are hysterical and he's just like, it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
But it's fine. But it's completely fine.
For everybody's context, I was relevant on Taylor Swift when she had curly hair and she still looked like an adolescent. Okay. I was relevant on country Taylor Swift when she started transitioning into pop, which is really when she started to become world famous. In my limited scope, is when I started to lose some context and especially have lost context over the last probably 6-8 years or so. So, for everybody, it's not that I'm not a Swiftie. It's not that I'm anti-Swift. Actually, as a matter of fact, I would say she does a lot of good for a lot of people, especially economies, because there's this systemic effect when she comes to play a show in the town that everybody benefits off of that. Beyonce has a very similar effect in terms of like the economic impact that they have. But apparently she has a significant psychological impact on my, co-podcasters today as well. So,
and your wife, and your wife,
and my wife, and my wife, and my wife. That's also true.
Yeah, also true. So Renee, today we're going to kick off this podcast with the funnest story that I didn't remember it until you brought it to my recollection. So can you tell the great people of really planet Earth, because this is where this is going now, the whole entire planet, 100%. It's not just stuck to the US, how you and I met?
Yes. So Brian and I, my husband and I, were finishing up our foster parenting journey, and we knew we were going to form a nonprofit. And we weren't really sure yet what we were going to do, but isn't that how you do things? Launch it and then figure out what you're going to do. But I had this idea that we should start providing trauma-informed yoga. And someone had said to me, oh my gosh, you have to meet Stacy. She's a foster parent and she teaches yoga. And I was like, fantastic. So I went down to the studio where you were teaching, and I waited for you to come out of class. And I introduced myself and said, "Hi, I'm Renee. I'm going to be forming a foster care nonprofit, and I would really like you to teach yoga to the children in foster care." And you looked at me and said, "Absolutely not." My bubble was burst right there. No, we sat and chatted for a while, and it made total sense to me because you were like, I can't do that and bring things up in kids that then their foster parents are not going to be able to respectfully and accurately handle once they go home. So you said, "I'm happy to do it for foster parents," and then I was like, there it is. Okay. And yes, that was the
I
genesis.
Oh my gosh, I love when you told me this story last week because I'd forgotten it. And then I was like,
Yeah.
Stacey, there are better ways to say no. And I hopefully have gotten a lot better at being like, oh, absolutely, hell not.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to happen.
You were like, "No, that is not going to happen."
Well, it also was funny as we've had time to think about the story over the week, is that as I was teaching and starting to really speak, this was, 8 years ago, it wasn't uncommon for somebody to come up to me and be like, "Oh, I heard you speak here," or
Yeah.
"Oh, can I talk to you?" And so when you walked in my mind, you were just another person who wanted to talk to me. And I was
Yeah.
just like, I had no point of reference
Yeah.
to who you were, which is really funny because Justin was joking with me this morning about how I'm navigating relationships on social media. And he's like, "Yeah, you're gonna have to figure this out. So when you're famous," I'm like, sir, like that's not the goal here. Because
Yeah.
really, Renee, like I want him to be the front man, and I'm just gonna hide behind him a little bit. And
Yeah.
that's not how this is playing out right now. So I remember that so clearly. You walked in, and I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like who wants to talk to me?"
Now who wants something? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now who wants something else from me?
Mhm.
And then what was so encouraging about this story, though, is for me to be reminded of I knew what I was doing then when nobody
Yeah.
believed what I was doing.
Yep.
Like, still the heart of protecting a kid and being like, I can't do this because the adults won't be able to navigate this. And it would be unfair to a child to say, hey, this doesn't work
Yeah.
and have it disrupt them for the remainder of their life. And that's really how our relationship started. And so it is true. I have gotten to work with Renee. Gosh, what did we do? 6, 7 different things where I would come and
Yeah.
we did trauma informed yoga, and then I shared my story,
Yep.
and then I abandoned you and I moved to California. And I'm so
Exactly. So
I'm so
rude.
sorry, Renee. But listen, I came back and I bring my dynamic duo buddy. Like I left, but I came back and doubled down. I came
Well,
back and
and we
doubled
stayed
down.
connected. We were connected on social and still were following each other's journey and whatnot. And then, yeah, when you had recently posted what you and Justin were doing together, that's when I reached out again and was like, "Hey, okay, now teach this to our foster
Yeah.
parents because this would be amazing." Yeah.
Well, before we jump into the foster parents, I would like the world, the planet Earth, really, because
Yes.
that's just the target right now, for them to know what made you say yes to being a client of Justin and I now.
What made me say yes is after the initial chat, and I mean, look, I've been trauma parenting for 10 years now. So, what made me say yes was leaving that conversation with hope. And I think I told you that at the end of the call. And that's something that I haven't had for so long. And the element of, I mean, obviously Justin's knowledge on the healthcare side, but it's different when you have someone who has walked your walk. And in particular, the walk that is holding you in survival mode. That is that's the big difference. So Justin, I mean, you're great to have, but it's kind of all about Stacy.
He's used to it.
Which is why I get heavily confused. And Stacey was like, I would just love to fade into the background. I'm like, you do realize that your story is the attractive one, right? Okay, just making sure we're on the same page. So whenever you have to manage people wanting to talk to you, then we can tackle that together.
I can't just send them to your abs. I can't just hide and be like, "Go talk to Justin's abs."
Look,
I have seen that picture.
There are helpful coping mechanisms and there are shitty coping mechanisms. And I'm not sure that falls into the helpful coping mechanisms category. But feel free to send them wherever their heart desires.
No, I won't. I won't send them wherever they're.
So that's actually a pretty good transition, or I don't want to miss what Renee said there as far as giving her a sense of hope, or just there's an essence and aspect of hope in the conversation that me and Stacy had with you, Renee, and said, hey, we hear you, we see what you're going through. And although neither one of us specifically have gone through the exact same things, Stacy has had a similar background in raising foster and adoptive children, right? And been through that process and understands, like, I am coaching Stacy through those things, and she's part of the way down that journey. And so now we together are like, yep, let's supercharge this process and, give this piece to this community, which obviously is more than in need of it. And so that takes me to, how did that same theme, again, obviously working with us is a little bit of a different theme than starting a nonprofit, but I want you to tell the story of how Foster Source got started, because again, on attempt number 1, and I know this is attempt number 10,000, that really struck me. And so I feel like that's a good place for you to start with how Foster Source got started.
Yeah, it started, I mean, like I said, we were fostering, and while we were fostering, we just wanted to talk to other foster parents, and we just wanted to talk to them when our caseworker wasn't sitting right next to us. So we put out a thing on our local neighborhood buy-sell trade thing and said, hey, are there any foster parents in the neighborhood? And there were like 20 of us. So we started meeting at our house once a month on a Friday night. Everybody would bring something. We'd make our teenage son watch all the kids in the basement. And we would really just talk about our cases. And there was a lot of crying, a lot of laughing, and just a lot of validation that, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one who feels like I'm doing a horrible job at this. I'm not the only one who feels like I'm failing this child. And we realized very quickly that we felt more filled after those events than we did after the county sponsored trainings or support groups. So we asked the county if we could, get training certificates or training hours for it. And they said yes. And that was really the genesis of it, was knowing that caregivers want to be connected. And there's a lot of agencies serving the children in care, which is so important. But there were very few, if any, serving the caregiver. And that's when we thought, the light bulb went off, like, okay, half of foster parents quit in the first year as is. We have to figure out why. We know one thing, it's not because of the children. We have to figure out why that's happening and do what we can to stop it or slow it. So it's really about retention of the caregiver.
Gotcha. Yeah. So started as kind of a book club of sorts, book club size anyway. It's like, hey, let's just get a social club. I'll put it like that.
Yeah.
Social club. Hey, let's get together and talk about our grievances a little bit and just commiserate. And now it's not only a resource of wealth of knowledge and support, but y'all, if I remember right, give actual hard goods to the family.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, we do several things. So we teach a lot about trauma parenting because trauma parenting looks very different than neurotypical parenting. So we do a lot of education about what that looks like. We do tons of what you're referring to, what we call hard goods. So bunks, mattresses, car seats, weighted items. You know, if you're getting a sibling set of 4, we're going to buy your bunks and your mattresses so that you can just focus on getting to know the kids and helping them feel comfortable in your home and helping them feel safe. And then we pay for the foster or kinship parent to have their own therapist because it's really, really hard. The goal of foster care is always for the child to return home, and we want that to happen. But when they've been in our home for any amount of time, it's very hard when they go. It can feel like a death. And beyond that, foster parenting just brings up all your own junk. So the better you can process it, the better the chance is that you can keep going.
Well, before we move on, I want to just give a little clarity for people. This isn't their world, because when Renee and I can
Yeah.
get on a conversation, we throw around terms that are common knowledge to us, but might be really shocking. So when you say, "Yeah, you got a sibling set of 4," people are like, "Wait, what?"
Wait, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when we pull kids, we always want the siblings to stay together. So we always want to find a foster family that will take, that's called a placement, that will take placement of all 4 together. And I also mentioned kinship, which is also a foster parent type caregiver, but one that has a previous relationship with the child, like a grandparent or a coach, teacher, neighbor, someone with whom the child has a previous connection. And when at all possible, we're going to try, when I say we, I mean the county or the state, will try to place with kinship first because that's a closer connection to family.
Absolutely. And so if anybody knows, my story is that we adopted a sibling set of 3. And our youngest, still Benjamin, the reason that we have him is because we had the older 2 siblings. And it was
Mm,
like, how can we keep them all together? And because children on some level, I mean, this is why we got into adopting siblings, and we'll get into more of your story, but that, on some level, they know that their biological parents or caregivers did something wrong and that they
yeah,
can't be safe with them. And they understand on some level why they can't return home, but they
yeah,
don't understand, why do I have to lose my sibling? My sibling didn't do anything wrong.
yeah.
So the goal of keeping it together, that was one, because you and I are like, yeah, 4 kids, that's just Tuesday. But
Right,
to the people who are listening, that's
right,
not known. And then the other language that I wanted to get into was trauma parenting versus
right
neurotypical
on.
parenting. And this is going to be the piece that goes beyond a child who's come in foster care or adoption. This is a child of divorce. This is a child who's had
Oh,
severe
yes,
medical needs,
yes.
who had like early onset medical things of being in the hospital or NICU or things like that. And so when we talk about trauma parenting, though, from Renee and I's perspective, that is children who had literally physical neglect and abuse.
Hmm.
Trauma parenting goes beyond that. That is a child who has experienced any previously traumatic event in their life. And so that
Yeah,
actually changes the way that their brain functions and
right,
processes information and how that's stored in their body. So when we say neurotypical, that would probably be, I hate to use the word normal because normal is just such
right.
bullshit, but these are my air quotes if you're watching, for
Yeah,
normal. um a normal 2-parent, non-traumatic, more than
yeah,
middle class, no medical um problems, would their brains have more support to develop neurotypically. So those were
yeah,
just 2 things that you said. I was like, hold on, let's bring our audience
yeah,
up to speed and
for
not throw them
sure.
into a thesaurus, because it is different. Because having biological children and non-biological children, I parented my biological children, who are neurotypical, traditionally until we became foster parents and
Yeah,
trauma came into our house. And then I
yeah,
had to become a trauma informed parent to my biological children because I
yes,
brought trauma into the house,
correct.
which is a very
Yes,
different perspective.
yes.
So, one of the questions that I literally don't know the answer to, um, is, and I love it, but I don't want to go there yet. What is something, when you started Foster Source, that you were weak at that you are now strong at?
Great question. I think lots of things. I was very weak and very green at the beginning. We like to joke, Brian and I have degrees in German, so we really have no business directing a foster care nonprofit. But I was certainly weak about really advocating, stop laughing, advocating for the caregiver and really just getting in there and pushing, 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 and really being bold about the ask. Specifically of funders. This is important, right? These are our kids. These kids need better funding. The foster parents need better training. Foster parents need mental health care. And so now, put me in a room, give me 30 minutes. I can get you on board 100%. But at first, we were kind of tiptoeing around it for sure. Because and partly because I think initially it made counties feel like it was some sort of affront to things they weren't doing.
Yeah, the county doesn't look like they're doing a bad job.
Right. And I mean, listen, we had a great experience with Adams County, and caseworkers are so overwhelmed and funds are limited, resources are limited. So we get it. We get it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes back to the question that I wanted to ask, but I wanted to get that one asked first. Is I don't even know, 8 years later, what brought you into foster care? Like, what made you want to be a foster parent?
Brian,
yes, Justin.
Brian
I want to clarify something real quick before Renee starts. Is there's a difference between fostering and adopting, just so people are clear on that, because I feel like we kind of like we've danced around it, but this is something that I didn't understand, so I just want to make sure everybody else is clear on this. Fostering is bringing kids who had to be removed from their caregiver into the foster care system. You chose to be one of those people that said, hey, bring them over to my place. I'll take care of them on my own dime and all that kind of stuff, right? That's the essence, I'll say, of the foster care system, right? Now, the goal, like you said, is to put them back with parents or kinship.
Yes.
Something to that degree, right? Put them back in a stable environment with somebody that they already know or are related to.
Yes.
Should that not happen or be available, you have the option to adopt. That's how the process goes.
Correct. No child is in care for something he or she did, first of all. It's always because of a struggle that the parents are having. And yes, the goal is always that it's short-term, temporary, and that children return home. Does that always happen, or is that always possible? No. So are adoptive families needed in foster care? Yes. But you shouldn't foster if your goal is to adopt, because that means you're hoping for another family to fail.
I love that you said that way, because that really is the truth about adoption. If we get to the place that children are adopted, then we failed. The system failed.
Yeah.
We as a society failed on a huge level. And that is the Band-Aid to that bullet hole.
Yeah.
I thought you'd like that, Renee.
Band-Aids don't fix bullet holes. Yeah. That's a T-Swift reference. No, they
don't. So even adoption, when we talk about, and not here for my story today, but like adoption doesn't solve trauma.
Permanency,
adoption actually, I mean, causes trauma. I mean,
absolutely.
It's not magical.
No, it's not rainbows and unicorns. It is trauma from the beginning. There's a book called The Primal Wound, and that talks about that first primal wound of being removed from your mother. Adoption is sometimes the best case scenario in a situation, and but trauma sure doesn't end at permanency, for sure. And like you mentioned earlier, Stacey, about kids wanting to be with their siblings, kids still want to be with their parents, even despite the abuse and neglect. That's their parents. So
we'll save attachment for a completely different podcast, Renee. trauma
that's a
bonds
whole
and
other one.
attachment would be
Yeah.
saved for a completely different
Yeah.
podcast a year or two down the line, for people who want to understand why that is. But Justin, are
Yeah.
we good to move to why Renee wanted to foster?
For sure. I just wanted to make sure that was a clarification, that people knew that fostering and
Yeah.
adoption do not go hand in hand, nor is that the goal, right? Because
Right.
I didn't know the difference between that. I didn't know how I didn't know how
Yeah.
that process actually works. So now that we know, now Renee, yes, why did, first of all, y'all decide to become open to to being foster parents, and then what happened, or what's the story
Yeah.
behind you ultimately adopting?
Yeah, so we always kind of had it in the back of our head that we wanted to foster, but never really did anything about it because everybody thinks they'll do it when they're quote unquote ready, and you never are. But a foster family moved in down the street from us, and they had 2 biological teenage daughters. They had a boy they had privately adopted from Guatemala, and then they had just taken in a sibling set of 3 from foster care. And we got to know this family, and they were so amazing, and the kids were so incredible. And guess what? They were just kids. They were just kids. And we became pretty close with them. They didn't live in our street very long. They moved probably within a year, but we were like, okay, yeah, we want to foster. So there's typically kind of a few different groups of people who foster. Some feel called by their faith to foster. Some are looking to expand their family if that should happen. And then some are kind of like everybody should help, and that's kind of the category that Brian and I fit in, is that this kind of it takes a village mentality, that if you're able to help, if you've had a lot of privilege in your life, you should do what you can to help those who haven't. So that was kind of our reason for fostering it. And also we had 2 biological children, and we thought they need to recognize that not everybody lives like we do, and that everyone has a responsibility to help. We had no plans of adopting because we already had 2 kids. We were like, we are just helping. And the day we were certified at noon, and our worker asked if she could put our name on the list. And we said yes, but I said, give me one and make it an easy one. Like, I'm trying to set myself up for success here, right? Setting myself up for success. And she was like, okay, well, we always pull all the siblings, so it probably will be a while before we get a single. And we were like, that's okay, just put us on the list. That was at noon. And 3:00 that same day, we had a 28-day-old baby boy in our home. And we had said ages 11 and under because we had thought, let's see, Simon was 12 at the time and Nina was 5. So we thought, oh, this will be fun, a cute little playmate for the kids. And we got a 28-day-old baby. And yeah, we fostered for 3 years. 9 other kids came and went during that time. Our little guy was with us from day one. His case did go to adoption, and of course we were very happy to include him or bring him into our family permanently. But we certainly recognized what a loss it was for him and for his parents, for whom we grew a great affection over the years.
I think that's a good part of the story, is that, and it was the same with ours. I think biological parents can be vilified, but also foster parents can be vilified.
Yes.
But really, when you get to know the parents, and we tried really hard in our kids' bio's mom case to give her every shot and whatever support we could at helping her be successful so she could get her kids back.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that isn't so readily talked about. I mean, the media does a horrible job about just about everything.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And so I love that you said that, because there is still really pain attached to that. that I
Gosh.
mean, it does go back to the primal womb, but I'm really glad that you brought that up, that piece of the story of, that loss of the bio family
Yeah.
too. They don't forget that they have children somewhere else.
Oh my
And a
gosh.
lot of them
No.
go on
Yeah.
to perpetuate having, I mean, it was this
Yeah.
case, in our case, that bio mom, just because of her IQ, thought if every kid she had, she could get it right. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I had children 7, 8, and 9 from our kid's birth mom, because every
Yeah.
time, even though she had lost custody of all of the other ones, she's like, if I do this again, I'm gonna get it right. And I think that's something that most people don't understand about it, is that trauma is generational,
Oh,
passed
yes.
from one generation to another, but also healing is generational. And it only takes, one relationship, one family to really change a generation. Now, that's really hard when you're in the middle of trauma parenting and you're in the
Yeah.
middle of the fire. And I kind of want to bring this back to the beginning of our conversation, where when I asked, like, hey, what made you say yes to Justin and I, was that, you're like, hey, I wanted hope. And you had gotten to watch me come out on the other
Yeah.
side. And by no way am I done. I just know I'm farther
Yeah.
along than most who have had such a significant story and made it like
Yeah.
my life's calling to learn all of the things so that nobody
Yes.
else would have to walk the road that I walk. I didn't wake up one day and be like, hey, let's really learn about the nervous system, how trauma is stored in the body, breath work, and let's get
Yeah.
really functional on a cellular level. Can we talk about your amygdala, your hypothalamus, and your gut health today? All wrapped up in trauma,
Right.
and call it Tuesday. And Renee, you looked at Justin and I and were like, damn, yeah, let's go.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. And so what I want to bring it back to is, other than hope, why is it now that you're like, I'm willing and want to tackle your own personal health journey?
Yeah. I mean, there's so much more to be done. Like, I have so much I want to do and so much more life to live. You can get in a spiral of trauma parenting where it almost feels like you're sitting in an airport watching the world go by, and you realize you're actually not really participating. And so that's the other component of it. And I think what really drew me to it, Stacy, for with you, is that from the very first call you said, how did you phrase it? Something about like you're not going to change the outcome, or like it's never going to be quote unquote solved. Right. And that's what we're all kind of looking for and yearning for. But I think if we can get to the point where you accept that, then you can start with these little steps that can lead you to a place where you can be healthy and functional and more than surviving.
That's the way what that makes me think of, Renee. I'm glad that you put it like that, which of course we never had heard that explanation from you until right now. But it almost sounds like you're describing it as your life was on pause in a certain way, right? You kind of you were still living, right? But you kind of like paused everything you considered to be like maybe
Yeah.
fun and exciting is the only short way I'm going to put it, but like meaningful for a long time, or like doing something for yourself, right? Like you put that
Yes.
on pause and you're like, I will get to it when ... Like you
Yeah.
said, it'll be the right time to be a foster parent when, and that's never, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always going to be a challenge. And so if you're thinking, if you're that person who it does have their life on pause for in whatever way, because of you're a foster parent, or because you're a first responder, or because you're in some financial situation, or whatever the thing is, and you think
Mm-hmm.
that when that moment comes you're just going to be able to hit play and go back to what you were doing,
Yeah.
that's false, right? That's not going to happen. Like you said, you're doing it because you want to get back to running and enjoying running again, right? I know that's a personal thing
Yes.
for you, right? You want to get back to feeling like you felt X years ago, right? And
Yes.
so in that way, where me and Stacy come in is we want you to hit play, but you have to realize that the expectation that things are going to be like they were 10 years ago is a very unrealistic expectation. And although we can build your capacity to whatever it is capable of, it is not a hit play process. It is a slowly creep the movie along until we get the chance and the opportunity and the timing to hit play. So I just thought that was a good way that you brought that up.
Well, and it's hard to recognize when. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it's hard to recognize when you're on pause when you're living in chaos, because you're like, how could I be on pause? My life's chaotic. But it really is. And just, I mean, I don't really want to admit this, but just in the few weeks that we've worked together, like there have already been things like I went and bummed around by myself last week in a few stores, which I haven't done for years, because when I leave my office, I come home and I sit on the couch and I start doom scrolling until bedtime. And that's the only thing I want to do. And that's the only, that's just it. I don't have anything left in me. I don't have any oomph to go do anything else. And I have lately.
Okay, I first love that we got to hear about this now before like our call on Wednesday.
The oomph is back, baby. The oomph is back.
And it's probably more to do with the break you make me take during work, where you make me go sit outside and listen to 3 Taylor Swift songs. I think that's probably making the biggest difference.
Stupid mental health. We hate that stuff.
Gosh, we're the worst, Justin. Why do we make people take care of themselves? Why do we even have jobs? We should just quit now. We're the worst.
I was perfectly happy sitting at my desk and working through lunch.
So the piece, and you started to explain it perfectly, because though this is about you and your story and the work that we get to do together with you, just not personally, but, and we'll get into the things that we get to do with Foster Source together, is this trauma parenting. And you kind of described what it is. And I hear this a lot with my single moms, my clients who've been married to narcissists. Somebody who's had a death in the family, there, or a medical trauma, like you had an accident and you could do things. I see that a lot with my vets, that they're different after combat, and that reconciliation of the life before they had and what they have now. And this idea of trauma parenting is that that fight, flight, freeze, or even fawn is really there, that you're in your life, but you're not a participant of it. And people think that you're living because you kind of are, you thrive in chaos because peace feels like violence. If there's peace in our homes, not now, but at the time, that you are looking for somebody, something went wrong. If it's quiet, then that's danger. Quiet is not good. Quiet is something is going extremely wrong, and it's a critical situation. And so that is not just in regards to parenting kids from foster care or trauma. That is legitimate for a lot of families right now, whether the things that are happening in school violence or bullying, or we live in a very different world now where trauma isn't just at the hands of a parent or a caregiver. It's very, very systemic. So if you listen to this far and go, hey, this doesn't apply to me and my kids, I'm going to be like, actually it does.
Oh,
it does.
I mean, even just like the pandemic, right?
Oh God, don't even get me started on the collective trauma. Don't even.
Come on.
I will.
And no
different
one,
podcast,
we've
different
not
day.
even started dealing with it. So yeah.
No, talk to me in 10 years. Show me the kids. Yeah. Welcome to my TED Talk. So on that, I will do a TED Talk on that. Okay. I will so do a TED Talk on that. For parents who are parenting kids from really challenging places, however that looks, you shared with us, your Taylor Swift and how you're already 3 songs deep, and within just a month of us working together in this context. So people need to know that Renee and I have worked together for 8 years. Just in the last month that she's been working directly with Justin and I as her coaches, what would you say is the most marked difference just in the month that you've been doing this work? We heard a little bit of and I mean,
Yeah,
but
but
what would you say to other people?
I feel calm. Even my husband is like, "You're so much more calm." And listen, this is somebody with generalized anxiety disorder since the age of 10 probably, right? But he's just like, "I just noticed," he's told me more than once to go get him a thank you note so he can write one to you too, right? It, th- there's just yeah. Look, am I there? No. But it's fun to notice little glimpses of what could eventually be more regular.
Okay, first of all, I love that. And Brian, thank you. I'll send
Everybody
you a
loves
Starbucks
Brian.
gift.
You know that. Everybody
You
loves
know,
the trophy husband.
I know I have one. You he's the one who actually talks at all the events while I'm trying to hide. He's also the reason we can't leave on time because he's still talking to all of the people and I'm in the car waiting for him.
My God. Yes.
Bless the dude, the trophy husband. Mm, God, I love that man. My husband. I do like Brian though, but I don't actually
Yeah.
remember. I'm sure I've had a conversation with Brian, but it was probably in passing at one of the events that we've
Yeah.
done. So I do have a question for you because you have had a long history of kind of fighting with your health, right? And fighting in this journey of who you wanted to be. So before we get into what we collectively get to do as the three of us that we're bringing to really the planet, uh, how is what we're doing together different than anything you've done before?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people know, but some people don't, that the stress of foster parenting, I actually developed binge eating disorder. And only through the recovery process and the therapy process from that did I recognize how disordered my eating patterns and thought about food and health had been my whole life. So the weight struggle didn't really begin until after I had kids. I was always naturally slender. With our kiddo we adopted, I joke that I gained the most weight with the kid I didn't carry, right? And that is still true. Um,
Same,
but yeah,
same.
what's different about it is I've always been very black and white, very, and I mean, you give me a plan, oh, I'm gonna follow it, right? So I've been on those plans where you're at 1,000 calories and running and working out an hour a day and running 10 miles on the weekends and pouring the oil off the peanut butter and scraping it as thin as I absolutely can. So I think the difference is, and I had great results from that. Were they sustainable? No. But that's the difference is I don't see the extreme here and the results aren't quick.
I love that.
No, I love that too. Obviously, right? We do our best not to do anything in an extreme, but learn from extremes to apply it to the general population, right? And again, we will take on people who seem extreme from a medical standpoint, right? Again, not doctors don't play one on the internet, but that's the reason why we're here. And I think
Yeah.
you're a great example of that, Renee. So I don't want people to miss the reason why health coaching is important to you, but
Yeah.
to the industry as a whole is because, like you said, you've had some type of generalized anxiety since you were a kid, right?
Oh yeah.
And I've seen your medical history, and you've been on medication for that for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So if we look at this as a ladder, right? Like medication supposedly is supposed to take you to the top of the ladder, supposed to solve the issue. Okay. Like you made it, right? What we know that to be true though is that doesn't happen. First of all, it doesn't happen. You don't get anywhere biologically unscathed. So there are always going to be side effects, right? There's no biological free lunches, as I like to say. And at the bottom end of the ladder, there is Renee doing it on her own based off what she can see in the world, right? Things she can read on the internet, what videos she can watch, content she can consume. And so you start to climb that ladder, but as soon as you don't know what else to do, you do something very extreme, you fall off that ladder. And it's just this constant recycling of climbing up a few rungs, falling off, maybe a few more rungs the next time, falling off. And you get to this point, like you said, where you essentially burn out and you're like, well, I don't have time in my life to keep reattempting this, so screw it. Right?
Yeah.
And so we come in as that moderator in the middle and go, okay, we're not doctors, so we can't prescribe quote unquote the solution, which is really, if at all, it's only part, if it's necessary, right? And we prop people up and go, we'll start with you at the bottom of the ladder, but when you get ready to fall off the rung, we'll only let you fall one rung, right?
Yeah.
Or we'll hold you on the rung that you're at, right? And then we'll kind of like continue to support you as a lifeline as you go up the ladder. And we are not pulling you up the ladder because we can't want it more than you want it, but we can show you how to prevent from sliding back down that ladder, if at all, not very far. And when you do get to the top of that ladder, it's like, cool, where's the next ladder, right? That's where we that's where we really aim to people to be. So I'm glad that you're seeing these generalized results already, and we just gave you kind of your first physical protocol this past week. So excited to see what that actually looks like for you in real life. And so, I think that summarizes it pretty well as far as, where you're at, where you've been, where you're going.
Totally. And I mean, in past attempts, it's always been either a number I was looking for, whether it be on the scale or in a clothing size. And I've done enough restorative work and therapy after the eating disorder that's really not of interest to me anymore. Like we said in our first meeting, like, I want to run longer. I love running. It's so comforting to me and it's so therapeutic that I want to just enjoy it again. I still run and I still enjoy it, but there was more enjoyment when I was in a healthier body.
100%.
Yeah.
So what do we get to do next? What's the thing we get to work on together? Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So when I reached out and I started chatting with you guys right away, I was like, foster parents need to hear this as an option for healing for them, and as an option for them to really put the focus on themselves. I remember in our first meeting, I was like, okay, listen, here's what I don't want from you. And I don't want you to tell us you need self-care. Go take a bath. Go enjoy a glass of wine and read a book. I mean, we've
on a walk.
We've heard it all. We know that. And I didn't want anything promised of a solution to your struggles. But I feel like it's just really important to share the hope, because for me that was big, and just the opportunity to start a journey.
Really, if we're going to simplify what we're bringing to Foster Source on April 6th is, working your way out of survival mode.
Yeah.
Is the simplest thing, which isn't simple at all. Right. And so like Justin and I are super excited to be able just to do this for anybody in general. Like, this is the thing that like we wake up in the morning and like, we're like, holy crap, like we get to do this every day.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it's personal. It's personal that if I can go back to people who are still standing in the fire and be like, hey, I've got water, and there's a way to have less collateral damage in doing this.
Yes.
Like, I see the sacrifice you're making to stand in the gap for kids who have no home and have no place to be. And I want your marriage to be intact on the other side of it. I want your biological children to be intact, and those relationships to be intact on the other side of it. I want your health to be intact on the other side of this, because that keeps you in the game longer, not just the game of life. But I mean, as you said, most people do not leave being foster parents because of the children. It's
right. Yeah.
We weren't set up to win. And you will hear me say this in my story 100% of the time. In a broken system, you are forced to make broken choices. And those choices really have collateral damage on, I mean, your soul sounds dramatic, but you're forced to make choices that in any other environment you would not you would not
Correct.
make. And so for me to be able to go take, hey, these 10 years of expertise, to come back and be like, I would have done it different. And literally here is the roadmap. How is
Yeah.
what I am so excited to do, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I care about the parents. I care about the biological children, but this stops the trauma cycle. Even if it's for one kid, that makes the
Yes.
placement easier, and it just makes things smoother. So coming out of survival mode and creating that really balance in life for as much as it can be while you're still standing in the middle of the tornado is what I'm
Yes.
so excited to bring to you guys. So
Yes.
for those of you who are not in Colorado, well, this
You
is
could
an online
come.
event, so it actually doesn't
Yes.
matter where you are. This event, it doesn't matter where you are. Renee's
Yeah.
trying to get Justin and I physically in Colorado again together, but for
Yes.
this event, it is an online event. How do people sign up for this event?
Yes. So there's going to be a link on our website, and a link that I'll give Justin that we can put on the podcast here as well. And you just register online. If you're a foster or kinship parent in Colorado, there's no fee. Outside of Colorado, it's only $20. And let me tell you, this might be the best $20 you've spent in a while. Yeah, like Stacy said, it's online, and we at Foster Source, we love to practice language inclusion. So we always have live Spanish interpretation at all of our classes, so caregivers can listen in the language of their hearts. So you can either listen in the English or the Spanish channel, and then we record it for viewing, and the on-demand viewing, they get hundreds of views every month. And I'm just, when I was thinking about what to name it, because there's so much to cover and we only have 2 hours, but I named it Finding Our Way Back to Health, a Trauma Caregiver's Approach. So once again, Justin, love that you're on board, but it's really about Stacy for this audience. Because we hear lots of approaches or things we quote unquote should be doing, but to hear it from someone who's walked the walk, that is the difference. We've had, nutritionists come and speak before, but it's about a million different things, right? It's not just a nutrition plan, or it's not an exercise plan. It's an approach to finding your way back to health.
Well, I know that you are teasing Justin a little bit, but here is
Of
the
course I am.
abundant
I adore
truth
him.
of the story.
Yeah.
Listen, he was pretty fierce with me today, so I'm not mad that you're handing it to him.
She's not going to stop you. Let's put it like that.
I'm not going to stop you. I'm not going to stop you. I'm actually not even mad about it, but I do want to give some truth to the playfulness.
Yes.
There is no way in hell I would be where I am without him. Because
yes, absolutely.
I tried this for a long time before him.
Yeah.
And so my approach is because I adopted his methodologies in how to get me out of my own way. So there really is no this version of Stacy that you see without his expertise. And we joked together before, because everybody's like, oh, Stacy, you need to write a book. Stacy, you need to write a book. And I think, Justin, were we in Walmart when we were talking about, oh yeah, we're in Walmart when I was running people over with a cart. And you're like, yeah, I'll have a small part in your book. And I'm like, friend, like there's no book without you. Now we're actually kind of writing one together. So not kind of, there's a Google Doc. It's
you're
happening.
Definitely a dynamic duo that is. But to those who may end up working with Justin and Stacy, you can pit them against each other. Trust me, I've done it and will continue to do it.
Hold on. You tried to pit us against each other.
All right, fine. Justin agreed with you.
There have been a couple occasions, but it's really kind of challenging to find something we're going to disagree on. But I don't want that to be missed, that yes, it's my story and I'm 10 years in, but together we've done something that was never accomplished before And we're still in it. Like, we are still repairing even now the systems of my body that 15 years of trauma have remnants of. So, which will be great for people to watch on the other side of it. But really, without him, there's no me even being able to do this on this level. So,
forgive me, Justin.
No, you're always forgiven, Renee. You're our golden child. What I do want to clarify too is, although it is, you know, titled "A Journey Back to Health," a trauma informed approach or trauma caregivers approach, and while we, you know, the two of us make, you know, both halves of that title, if you will, it's really for anybody whose body has ever fought them. Okay. Because the reason your body's fighting you is because of things that you've experienced in the past, right? Like, you know, the trauma history in this case. But the thing that we bring that is different, so if you wanted a synopsis, is everybody goes straight for the problem. Hey, I'm overweight, so I just need to eat less and move more. They go right to the solution, quote unquote, what they think is the solution, the fix, because everything needs to be fixed. First of all, your body's not broken. It just needs support, right? You're
Thank
not,
you for saying that.
We don't heal you because your body can do that on its own. We help support the systems that would do that anyway, right? And some people need more help than others. And so we don't go straight for the problem. We do what I call dieting the environment. Most people want to diet the body. We diet the environment, and that's internal and external. So you may be in the middle of the fire. That doesn't mean you can't do things to make yourself a better firefighter, right? That's the thing that we're trying to do with people, is diet the environment that led them to the conditions that they find themselves in, and kind of walk them back a little bit out of that, right? And give them tools along the way, because that's going to happen again, or a semblance of that's going to happen again, because what happens when you just take a shot, take a pill, get on medication, do something extreme, is you didn't remove yourself from the stimulus that got you to what you're trying to get out of. Right. And so we work in combination to try to diet that environment, right? Remove some pieces, add some pieces, and bring somebody back to the wholeness of what they are, so that, like I said in that ladder analogy, they don't fall off the ladder. As a matter of fact, they just move on to the next ladder. And so that's really what we're trying to do. And again, 2 hours is not a whole lot of time when you look at that scope of a journey, which is why we're going to have a special offering for the people who are attending this particular foster source presentation. And so with that in mind, we want to encourage everybody, even if you're not, quote unquote, a foster parent or kinship, caregiver, to come and participate and look at it from however it serves you.
Yeah.
Maybe they won't come as a foster parent, but they'll leave as one.
They could.
If you can hear my story and still want to be a foster parent, I've done a good job.
I was going to say, the state and counties have told me many, many times, you're a horrible recruiter. I know. Hey, because I just want to tell people how it really is.
This is how I got fired for speaking from the county, because I told our story and people didn't become foster parents. But here's the truth of that, is that it's a level playing field, and we're all humans trying to do the right thing. So Renee, I so appreciate you having here. I love the work that we get to do together, and I cannot wait to see the impact of it. I'm super here for this.
Same. I'm so grateful to work with both of you. I'm thrilled with what you're doing. I think this could be, I know it will be something very, very big, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. Thank you for coming to speak with our families.
Hell yeah. Well, we appreciate you, Renee. And with that, we will catch y'all on the next episode.